All right, welcome. In this video, I want to discuss how we can take an if-else statement and define a function using that if-else statement. So in previous videos, we were working with if-else statements that take a year as an input and based on the value of the year, match that year to the generation associated with that birth year. And so when we were running these previous code cells, we had to first input a year, then run this if statement, and then check to see what the output is. And every time I want to change a new year, I have to rerun the if statement and then check the output again. So is there a way to streamline this? And there is. We can create a function from this if-else statement. So I'm going to define a function that I call determine generation. I can name this function whatever I want. Usually we give it a descriptive name for what the function is doing. In this case, given a year, it's going to determine your generation. So what I'm going to do is define an action here, and that action is going to be assigned to this determine generation function. So it's a function, so we start it by defining it as a function, and then inside a set of parentheses, we input all of the arguments that need to go into this function. In our case, we just need one thing. You input a year, this function is going to determine which generation you're born in. This is my input year. And again, I can name this input whatever I want, but we typically use descriptive names to help make this more readable so we can follow what is going on. So our input is year into this function, and then we enter a space, and then we begin our function with a curly brace, and we end it with a curly brace. And to help the readability of this code, you typically indent all of the commands that are associated with this function. So all of these commands are what are going to be run when we run that function, and these are all indented. And then we just copy and paste our if-else statement that we had above over here. That's exactly what I pasted over here. So this is just going through, checking to see if the year value falls between certain boundaries, and if so, what generation that person would be. So this does all of that. And then we need to say, well, show me what is stored in generation. If I just run this first code cell, it's going to assign something to generation, but we won't see it. So it's kind of like running this alone. If I want to see and check to see my function is running correctly, I want to see what has been stored in generation. So that's what this last command is doing. It's saying after you run this function, the output that's going to be returned is going to be whatever is stored in generation. So I'm going to run this code cell, and we don't see any output because it's just creating a new function for us. And now I can input a year like 1985. This is a millennial, mind you. It's between 1981 and 96. And if I run this, it redefines year, it runs that if-else loop, and then it shows me what is stored in generation. And now if I want to change the year, I just need to change that in here. So if I change it to 1974, it's going to tell me that is other. If I change it to 2004, now it's telling me they're Gen Z. If I change it to 2014, now you're Gen Alpha. So this just kind of streamlines this process of we needed to enter year, then we needed to run this if-else statement, and then we needed to check what output we got. I just defined this function once, and now I can run it and change the year and check the output, just running one really simple code cell down here. So this is kind of like a pretty trivial example just to get us started. Um, it doesn't handle everything. So for example, here, if I entered a vector of years and I wanted to do them all at once, I can only do 1 year at a time. So we can think of in other ways of streamlining this. And there's also some situation where if someone were to enter 1981.5, for example, this is telling me it is a millennial because it's checking these input. It falls between 81 and 96. What happens if I chose like 1996.5? It's telling me other because it didn't fall in this range, so it is not getting mapped to millennial. It didn't fall in this range, so it's not getting mapped to Gen Z. So we have some situations where we might want to clean up our conditions here so that we can handle things like decimal valued years where someone might enter that. So typically, people think of their birth year as an integer. Okay, so we'll stop here, and in the next video, you'll have a chance to practice an example.